Okay, so good afternoon. My name's Morag Piers. I'm the Director of Scottish Studies here at the International Institute of Genealogical Studies, and our website is there on the screen. It's www.genealogicalstudies.com. And today we're going to talk a bit about some more unusual sources for doing your Scottish family history. Now, these are things that you might not have come across before. They might not be useful, they might, but it's just things that are mostly free, mostly online, and could take your research in another direction. So, oh, and now my button's not working. So, why should we look at lesser used sources? And by that I mean things that are not typically explored. We've all used the birth, marriage, death records and census records, and these can be really good for building a skeleton of somebody's life. When they were born, when they were married, when they died, where they were living at those 10-year blocks from the census. However, it doesn't really paint a picture of what they were like as a person. So looking at other sources gives you experience of looking at all these different kinds of records that were created for different reasons, and can throw up some really interesting stuff. And it can also make you a better researcher. It pushes you out your comfort zone. It makes you look at things that you maybe haven't thought about looking at before. And as I was saying, it adds colour to your research. Lets you get under the skin of someone and fills in some gaps about their life and what they were doing. It can potentially help with pre-1841 research. We know that's an issue before the censuses started, before the births, deaths, and marriages started. And a lot of people hit brick walls at that time. So could there be something in these sources that can help you break down those brick walls? And finally, and most importantly, it's a lot of fun. Looking at these records, it can get a bit dull looking at the same old things all the time. So looking at something new is a bit more interesting. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Trove. Now, this is a brand new website. It only went online in the spring, and it's still in beta, so you might find it a bit buggy. It works fine on my laptop. It doesn't work so great on my mobile phone. And the idea behind Trove is it's to bring together a lot of diverse websites. So it's to bring together Historic Environment Scotland, lots of information about listed buildings, ancient archaeological sites, Roman remains, prehistoric remains, and more recent stuff as well, things like pictures, photographs, images of things that are sitting in museum collections that there's not space for on the shelves. Really, really easy to use the website. This is the homepage. And in that big box you can see on the front where it says the key to Scots Past, you just type the search term you're interested in. Edinburgh, Glasgow. If you're interested in farming, if you're interested in Romans, whatever you're interested in, type it in and just start exploring. It's completely free. You don't need to register an account to join. And they're adding content to this all the time. So this is one that's really worth having a look at. So what kind of stuff can you find on Trove? So one of the good things is there's a whole lot of pictures that were taken just at the end of the Second World War um, for reconnaissance to kind of get an idea of the lie of the land, to make it more accurate than maps, and to show where things were. And this is Glasgow at the end of the Second World War. And if anyone's ever been to Glasgow, they'll know that a huge amount of housing and areas by the Clyde were knocked down just after the Second World War and completely redeveloped. So if you're doing your family history or for a client and you're finding references to places that you don't quite understand where they are or how they would fit on the modern map, this can be a good way of just getting your head around what things were like at the time when you the person that you're interested was living there. And you can just browse through all these images. The one thing I would point out, right, these are copyrighted images from the Historic Environment Scotland, which means you can use them for your own personal research, but you can't publish them, which means putting them online or giving them to a client in a report without permission from Historic Environment Scotland. Okay, they're similar to this. This is a similar idea to Trove, but this is purely focused on Glasgow. And it's the Mitchell Digital Archive. Mitchell is our main library in Glasgow. And again, these are about photographs of bygone years in Glasgow. And as you can see on the bar on the left, you can search by area. You can put a street name in if you know where your target person was living. Or you can search through subjects. So you can look for images of children or images of sport or images of workplaces. And again, even if you can't find the person that you're looking at, it gives a really good idea about what life would have been like. You know, a picture paints 1,000 words and all that kind of thing. And again, there's other websites which do the same kind of thing. There's Capital Collections, which is Edinburgh. And a lot of other areas around Scotland have got similar ideas of websites to put on their historic back catalogue of photographs. So the best way to look if there's a particular area that you're interested in, if you type into your Google search bar historical images or old photographs and then the location that you're looking for, and then something to see what comes up. Museums, galleries, all that kind of thing usually have some images. And they can, again, really paint a picture when you're looking at an area where the geography has changed so much since the people that were living there have, once all the redevelopment. And similarly, moving on, now this is my absolute favourite resource for Scottish research, and this is the National Library of Scotland's Maps website, which is maps.nls.uk. Again, completely free to use. You don't have to be signed in. You don't have to sign up for an account. You don't have to be in Scotland. And it's just a brilliant resource. It covers mostly Scotland. There are other maps for the rest of the United Kingdom and for Ireland, and they are gradually branching out to maps in other parts of the world, mainly in countries which used to be part of the British Empire, so Canada, Australia, New Zealand, some of Africa that were mapped. And again, there's some really cool tools on this website. I would direct you to the bar on the left, which says Guide to this website and Research Guides. There's lots of information there about the different kinds of maps, why they were made, and what you can use them for. So if you're really interested in maps, have a look around those. The one I'm going to show you is the one on the right-hand side there, which says side-by-side viewer, and this is the coolest tool on the whole website. Now, what this lets you do is it lets you split your screen in half, and you can choose a modern map on one side and a historic map on the other side. And as you move your mouse around, both sides move at the same time. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. And this is absolutely brilliant for looking at areas which have changed so much. So you can have a look to see for geographical features and what would have been there at the time when the person that you're interested in researching lived there. And I'll just show you an example of this in the next slide. So if anyone's ever been to Glasgow, this is what Glasgow, so the modern map here is on the right-hand side. And the big red thing that you can see going through like spaghetti, that's a motorway or a freeway, which was built in the 1960s right through the city centre. So cutting down a lot of the old buildings, a lot of the old tenement housing was demolished. So if you're researching someone, if you look on the left-hand side, places like West Graham Street and Shamrock Street, Grove Street, all these places, which were there in the 19th century on the map on the left, are no longer there in 2025 on the map on the right. So if you're Googling street names and street addresses and not coming up with anything, could the street have been renamed is the first option, or has it been demolished? But you can still get an idea of the layout of the land and what would be there now. It can be really disappointing if you're working with a client who's really keen to see where their ancestors lived, and you have to tell them that I'm really sorry, but it was knocked down and a motorway was built through the middle. But it can still give them a really good idea about the geography of the city. Far were they from the city centre? How far was it to school? How was it to church? Far was it to church? All that kind of thing. So this is a brilliant resource. To start, you just click on the magnifying glass on the top left, type in a place name. It'll come up with some prompts for whichever names you want to, places you think it thinks you might be looking for, and then you just go from there. Just be warned though, this is such a good site. You can spend hours and hours and hours on this site playing around, looking at all the different maps and how things have changed and developed over time. And again, I would just point out the copyright on this. You can't put any of these maps online without permission from National Library because these images are all copyrighted. If you're not finding any images for the area you're looking in, just bookmark the site, keep checking back because they're always adding more. And I think there is also a facility that you can email them and say, have you thought about adding on this particular image or this town that I'm interested in? So that's the National Library map website. So we're going to move on to something completely different, which is church records. Now, anyone that's done Scottish research will have experience with Scotland's People. Scotland's People is great, but it can work out very, very expensive. You can constantly be paying for credits for things to look at, and some of the records aren't that great. One of the things you can see for free on Scotland's People is the church records. And this is the records that were created by the church, by the parish, that are not birth, marriage, and death. They're more the proceedings of the church, the accounts, the list of people that were renting seats, all this kind of thing. They are watermarked, so you can't download them. If you wish to download them, you have to pay for it, but they're free to browse through. The downside is that they are not indexed. So that means you can't search for a person or a date. You have to just sit and read through them. And the coverage varies because not all of these were created in the first place and not all have survived. So how do you find them? So from the Scotland's People homepage, you go to virtual volumes, record creator search, and then you enter the parish that you're interested in looking at. And I'll show you an example of what kind of thing you might see. So this is New Kilpatrick, which is my local parish just outside Glasgow. Tells you a little bit about it, that it was within the Presbytery of Dumbarton, Synod of Glasgow and Ayr, and it tells you which records are available on Scotland's People from New Kilpatrick Parish. So we've got accounts for a good chunk of 20 years or so in the 18th century. We've got presbytery minutes, we've got minutes and accounts from further back. This is quite unusual in that they've got minutes going back to 1693. Some parishes have got very good records, others have got hardly any records, and this is probably just because there is no standardized method of record keeping. Everything that exists has been passed to Scotland's People for digitisation. If you're not finding it, it's not that you're not looking in the right place, it's probably that it doesn't exist. So what do these records actually look like? Sorry, just moving on here. So Luss is another parish not far from here on the banks of Loch Lomond. And as you can see, there's much greater variety of records available for Luss. They've got communion rolls and stipend accounts, which is like accounting money of people that were donating money to the church, which don't exist for New Kilpatrick. So it's really just luck of the draw what you find. So this is what they actually look like. The one thing I would say is writing can be challenging. This is actually okay writing. Some of the writing can be very difficult. So if you're not good at reading old-fashioned secretary hand, you might want to start practicing. And you do have to read through. The minister or whoever was taking the minutes would often write the name of the person that was being discussed in the margin. So you can just look right through the margin and start picking out. So what's happening here? So these are great. These are really gossipy. The Kirk session would deal with moral issues and issues, things like neighbour disputes or land disputes, something that wasn't worth going to the legal authorities about. So here we've got in June 1694, after the ministers and elders got together, they had heard an allegation that John Cahoon of Kilmerdinny, which is the big land-owning family around here, had fallen in fornication with his own servitrix, Elizabeth. So he's been accused of having premarital sex with this lady, this servant, and they ordered for her to be cited. So of course it's not the man that gets into trouble over this, it's the servant girl who is asked to appear at their next meeting, their next diet. And right enough, on July the 2nd, 1694, Elizabeth Allison appears at the Kirk session and admits that she's guilty of this allegation of fornication with her master Kilmerdinny. And then it goes on to say what punishment they would give Elizabeth, which is usually public acknowledgement of her sins in the church on the Sunday and public shaming. So it's all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of things in the Kirk session about poor relief, families that are coming to the church asking for child support, women who are going to the church and asking for the church to declare that a certain man is the father of their illegitimate child, and marriages, irregular marriages, people that have got married elsewhere other than the church, so Gretna Green, that kind of thing, and would then have to go back to the church and say, actually, we're already married. So there's lots of genealogical stuff in here about relationships. There's stuff about, fathers parenting children, or just the fact that somebody had a child. And it can help you build out your family tree and find information that you're not going to get elsewhere. The issue is going through it all and pulling out these little nuggets of information. And the handwriting is not always great, and neither is the digitization. You have to bear in mind these records are almost 500 years old. Paper and ink has not survived as well as in for all editions. There's nothing they can do about that. If the record's been destroyed, it's been destroyed. But in the main, they're legible and they can be hugely entertaining as well as very interesting. So that's the Kirk session. And moving on to a related field, this is a book called Fasti, ecclesiae, scoticanae, which is Latin. I'm just going to call it Fasti because my Latin's not great. And it's really useful for anyone who has family members who have served as ministers in the Church of Scotland, which is the established church in Scotland, the Protestant church, the state church from 1560 and the Protestant Reformation. The Church of Scotland has a list of all ministers and which parishes they've served in. It's still published today, but historic versions have been put online at the Internet Archive for everyone to look at. Fasti is organised by geographical area, so you need to know which area of the country your person has been living in to know which volume to look at. So, for example, Lothian, which covers Edinburgh, and Tweeddale, which is the area down to the southeast of Scotland, down to the border, are in one volume. Aberdeenshire's in a different volume. And these are all listed on their Wikipedia page. Because these are sold, they're not under copyright. So if you do find stuff in there, you can do what you like with it. So what kind of things can you find in this publication? So I've just pulled one out here at random, which is from Cooper Angus, which is in the sort of the northeast of Scotland. And if you just read through that, you can see how much genealogical information you're getting about Thomas Ogilvie. It tells us who his father is. It tells us where he went to university. It tells us when he passed his ordination to become a minister. And then it tells us where he went to be a minister. And then it also tells us when he died and who he married and who his wife's parents were and who his children were. So these are absolutely brilliant for families that have some connection with the Church of Scotland. So it doesn't need to be the person themselves. If you can pick up the daughter or the son of a minister, it's always worth checking to see if they're listed in Fasti and what other information you can find there, which might help you get a little bit further back in your family tree. Especially when you're working with names like Thomas Ogilvie, it's not that uncommon. And if you know that it's Thomas Ogilvie from Turfodry, that might be helpful. Working out which of several people have of the same or similar names is the person you're interested in. So again, definitely worth exploring, and it's free to look at this one. So moving a bit further afield now, during the 19th century, the British Empire was at its peak, and thousands of people from Scotland went to live in India, which at that part was part of the British Empire. Scottish people in their thousands went out there, men mostly, took their wives with them, to work in the colonial service as administrators, doctors, military officials. And this website is FIBIS, which is the Families in British India Society. And this is a British-based society who work, as the name suggests, to help people research ancestors in India, where there is not census returns, where there are not as good birth, death, and marriage records as you will get in other parts of the UK. So FIBIS is, again, you can see at the bottom there, it says search our database for free, or you can become a member if you wish. If you have strong links to British India, you can become a member. They run seminars, they do all kinds of publications, and they're super helpful if you get stuck. If you do come across someone that's in India. So what kind of thing can you find on the FIBIS website? So again, you just type in the surname of the person you're looking for, and obviously that's going to be dependent on the number of results you get is going to be dependent on how common the surname is and the period that you're looking for. So they have transcribed a lot of marriage announcements that have been taken from local Indian newspapers and local Indian parish records. It was quite common for people that were out in India to publish birth announcements, marriage announcements in the local newspapers, knowing that eventually that would filter back to their families in the UK. So, for example, here we've got an 1809 marriage. Now, this is before civil registration, so you're not going to get that anywhere else. Of Rory Neil or Rory Neil, and he's marrying Sophia MacDonald in Bengal. And it says that, you know, at Bhagalpur in Bengal, this couple have got married and you've got the date. So this is the kind of information that can help you get back that little bit further on your family tree. If you suspect a marriage in India, it's always worth checking on FIBIS to see if they've got any information. Some of the Indian records have been put onto other websites such as Family Search, but FIBIS is the best all-round place for looking at British Indian families, and that might open up a few more avenues for you to explore. Okay, I'm just going to talk about a couple more. So valuation rules. Now, in Scotland, we have a completely different property system and taxation system to the rest of the United Kingdom. And a valuation rule was put together as a list of people that owned and rented property for tax purposes. So every year, somebody would come round, work out who was living in a house, who the owner was the owner the same person as the tenant or the occupier? So owners owned the property, obviously. Occupiers maybe they rented the property from the owner. They may have lived there themselves. They may have let it out to someone else who was the tenant, and it's listed by address. So these again are on Scotland's People. They cover they've digitized every 10 years. And they've chosen the years between the census. So if we've got census in 1851 and 1861, the valuation rules have been taken for the 5 years. So 1855, 65, 75, so on, and then 1940. Other years are still in local archives, so you'd have to look locally to find those. And again, they can be really useful for tracing people between the census returns. And you can search by the person's surname or browse through by parish to see all the people that were living in a particular parish at that time, bearing in mind that if you're looking at a city parish, that could run into several hundreds, if not thousands of people. So what do they actually look like? So this is Dalkeith, which is just outside Edinburgh in 1855. So you've got, I've just chosen this at random. So you've got the list of the people, name of the person, where they were living, and whether they're a tenant or a tenant occupier of that property. So as you can see, the 4 people that are on this list are all living in various different addresses in Dalkeith, and they're all tenants. None of them own their property. So this can help you confirm where people were living. What I would say is it costs 2 credits, which is about 50p or 70 cents US to click through and see these records, but I honestly wouldn't bother because you don't get much more than you get from the index. But these can be really useful if you kind of lose track of people. It can narrow a window for possibility of when somebody moved out of one address and into another if you can't find them on census returns. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is school records. These have only just started to be digitized, and it's mainly admissions records, school logs or diaries. They're not often online, and that's partly because they don't come in standard format. Every school district in Glasgow in Scotland did their own thing. Some school records are still in schools, some are in local archives, and some are in other libraries and museums. There's no centralised hub for all the school records. But recently, Western Bartonshire, which is just outside Glasgow, have put some of their records online. So I'll just show you what those look like and how you can use them for your family history. So this is the kind of thing you'll get. This is the admission records. So what you have is the date of the admission to the school. So it's year, so it's 1889, October the 28th, and you've got the names of the people that were admitted. So you've got Walter Bisland, and then his exact date of birth, not a year. So you've got his exact date of birth. So he's what, 6 when he's admitted to the school. And it also gives the name and address of his parent or guardian. So we know that Walter Bisland's guardian, which is presumably his father, is John, and they're living at 49 College Street. And if you look further down the line, you've also got the same day, an older child who was born in 1881 called Maggie Bisland, who also lives at 49 College Street. Now, the reasonable assumption here is that Walter and Maggie are brother and sister. So this could help you find other missing family members or just confirm relationships between people. And it also gives you the name and address of their parent, the Christian name of the parent, which can help you if you're trying to work out which one of many births is the correct one. So that's what these look like for the admissions records. The other thing is on the other page, so that it's like a double-sided, a big ledger that all the record runs right across the whole page, but they've digitized them in 2 separate halves. So the other side of the paper looks like this, and it tells you the date that they left the school. So it'll tell you when they left and why they left. So and where they went. So a lot of these people, it says none, and that's, what was their next schooling location. And they'd left school for good. And there's various reasons for that. You can see some of them were 14, which was the standard school leaving age, and they'd left school. Some of them had been given a labour certificate, which meant that they had been given permission to leave school and gone to work. And others are very delicate. They're just too unwell to go to school. But the others, there's this other one that says they've gone to Vale of Leven. So that's another local school. And it can give you an idea of these people, where they've gone, what they're doing, and where they might have gone next, and help you track people down that have got lost. So that's the end of what I want to say about Scottish records and unusual sources. I hope you've learned something. There's lots in there. There's lots of new avenues you can explore for your research. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. And if you want to learn more, there's a really good genealogical studies course on Kirk Sessions records. You can find all the details online at genealogicalstudies.com. And if you've got any questions, I'd be delighted to hear from you.